The Star Sport podcast is brought to you by Access Credit Union. Access Credit Union, funding dreams for over 50 years.
Close your eyes and pull like a dog.
And a new Irish record for Phil Healy, 22.99.
Christy Cooney hands over the Sam Maguire Cup to Graham Canty, Cork All-Ireland champions for the 7th time ever.
Hello, and you're all very welcome along to another episode of the Star Sport podcast. I'm your host Matthew Hurley, and I'm joined today by Star Sport reporter Sean Hollins. The Star Sport podcast is brought to you in association with our friends at Access Credit Union. Access Credit Union, where your bank really does matter. Choose credit union, choose local, choose community. Now later on the show, former Cork footballer John Hayes will be previewing the County Premier Senior Football final clash between Castlehaven and Nemo Rangers, which takes place this Sunday in Supervalu Pairc Ui Chaoimh at 3:30. And we might as well discuss the game in detail ourselves, Sean, before switching over to John. So yeah, an interesting pairing between the two. Obviously met in the final last year in 2023. Castlehaven winning that game by 11 points to 9. So that was a close encounter. And the Haven are going for 2 in a row this weekend against a tough enough Nemo side.
Yeah, so Matt, we're here again. Repeat last year's final. And whereas last year could have seen a bit more even, I think this year from the side performances, you might see a small bit more of a gap in favour of Castlehaven. Now they are coming into the game with a couple of injury worries and waiting on fitness on a few players, which might have a bearing on it. But there's no doubt throughout the county, everyone is seeing Castlehaven as favourites for this one. And, you got to back them in terms of they've left no stone unturned this year. Sean Cullen has taken the helm, and it seems to be almost seamless, the transition from James McCarthy to Shawnee. And they've seemed to get better. If anything, it's been fantastic for him this year. But they'll be sweating it over Damien and Conor Cullen on their fitness. Ronan Walsh, see how he is, because if Castlehaven do have a full strength match against Nemo, it's hard to look past them, and I'd imagine John will probably go into a lot more detail now when you're speaking to him. So looking at it from a neutral point of view, you would have to say the Haven are favourites.
You'd have to say so, definitely. Before we switch over to John, just your own prediction, I suppose, Sean. Do you think the Haven will win comfortably enough, or do you think it'll be a tight game?
Nemo will keep it tight, just from the basis of how they play and how they almost bring the wing forwards back to block up that shooting arc. All that talk about the shooting arc at the provincial games, but that's what Nemo do. They make you score from difficult angles. But Castlehaven have that fast running game that they can go through them at pace, and then they have the lads like the Michael Hurleys, the Brian Hurleys, Colin Maguires, who are well able to take scores from difficult angles if they're needed. So I'd imagine it'll be close for a good period of the game, but Castlehaven's fitness should tell in the end, like it did last year when they had that late kick. So maybe Castlehaven by 5 points.
Interesting prediction. We'll see what John Hayes says about the game now as he previews it as well. So delighted to be joined on the podcast by John Hayes to discuss this weekend's Cork Premier Senior Football Championship final between Castlehaven and Nemo Rangers. I suppose, first of all, John, most people would say that this is a close game to call, but look at Castlehaven's form at the moment. It is a good sign for the West Cork side going into this final.
Yeah. Look, I think if you're going on form lines, then Castlehaven are very much the team to beat in it. They're reigning champions, so they won this contest last year. It wasn't a particularly great game, but they got the job done, and were, I wouldn't say comfortable, but they won it reasonably clearly in the end, I think. And this year, I think they seem to have gone up another level. I suppose maybe last year for the semi-final with the Bars, we saw the first signs of kind of the evolution for Castlehaven. in the sense that they kind of just went away from just the 15v15 kind of approach against St. Finbarrs, and they pulled Mark Collins into the sweeping role at the back, where he also kind of works as a playmaker for them, and obviously then wing forwards and wing backs tuck in as well to kind of make it very tight, and leave the Jack Callahan and the two Hurleys up top. So like since they've started to do that, they've looked a very, very difficult team to beat. So I think they've, from the form we've seen so far, they seem to have made more improvement than Nemo in the last 12 months. So, in considering they won that game last year, I think it's reasonable enough to make Castlehaven clear favourites. As I suppose what would kind of give you a pause to think about it a little bit more is just it's Nemo Rangers, and Nemo's record in finals is phenomenal. Even though they were beaten last year, it's still phenomenal. So they are the top club side in Cork by a distance. And this particular team hasn't got the same adulation, and I think whatever Luke Conley said it, that they don't get the respect they feel they deserve. And it's hard to argue when I think they've won 5 of the last 9 counties or something like that. That they haven't. That it's hard to argue that they have got the respect that they deserve. But nonetheless, we have to take the game on its merits. And taking the game on its merits at the moment, Castlehaven are the favourite team. And look, I think it's looking good for them. It's set up well, but Nemo won't roll over for them.
Is there an argument though that Castlehaven had an easier run to the final than Nemo? Because even looking at some of Castlehaven's results, they beat Michaels by 218 to 5 points, beat Clonakilty the first day out by 6 points, whereas Clonakilty pushed Nemo all the way to extra time and then subsequently penalties. Is there an argument that Nemo have had a harder run to the final than the Haven?
I think they're quite similar, I suppose. Like you just made a point there, they both played off against Clan, and Castlehaven were more comfortable again, so that kind of backs up what we were saying all along. To be fair to Nemo, they probably were in charge in that game until the black card for Alan O'Donovan, and even during that black card period, they managed it quite well for the most part until Clan got 2 goals in about a minute or less than 2 minutes anyway, and that kind of changed the game on its head. Even after that, they pulled it back. 2 points down, 10 minutes to go. They brought it back and were ahead in injury time before Brian White kicked the equaliser. Obviously, same thing in extra time before Nemo prevailed on penalties. So that kind of game kind of took a life of its own after the black card and 2 goals. That really kind of picked Clan up, and they had a good crowd behind them in band and everything else like that. So they fought hard for that. And again, it was knockout football as opposed to the earlier stages was when it was Clan when Clan were taking on the Haven. So I wouldn't say, look, they've earned these, or they earned the buy into the semi-final, and then they got the Bars in the semi-finals. So I don't think it's been a case of it being an easier run. I think they've just been a little bit more impressive. That's all.
And you look at Brian Hurley's form at the moment, like even look at top scorers charts, he wasn't even in the top 10 going into the semi-final. Then against the Bars, he scores 11 points and goes up to 3rd. Like, the form he's in at the moment, is it possible that Nemo stop him during the final? And then Nemo will definitely have to put their best man marker, whether that be Kevin O'Donovan or not, on Brian Hurley.
Yeah, and I think it's even more important who the sweeper is. Like I kind of said it before the Bars game, I felt the Bars, I can understand Alan O'Connor was the best defender the Bars had last day, so they put him on Castlehaven's best forward. I would have put someone else on him just to slow him down and have Alan O'Connor be the second guy to come in to block him. Because I don't think in a 1v1 situation in an open field like you had the last day in Pairc Ui Chaoimh, I don't think on Pairc Ui Chaoimh pitch with Brian Hurley in the form like that, there's no one stopping him 1-on-1. So I don't really care who you are. There's virtually no one in the country. Only a couple of people could even kind of live with him. So I think the first guy's job is to slow him down, and then you want the second guy in to be really, really strong and powerful defender. So, like, I think it was 2013, when he destroyed Nemo in that county final, 12 points he kicked. And, I met a few Nemo people, like, we were up in the stand looking at it going, how are they leaving this one-on-one still all through that game? This is just, it's almost negligent kind of stuff, really. And it's crazy stuff. But I met a few Nemo people in the aftermath of that game, and I said, how was nothing done to stop Brian Hurley? How could you not double up in that situation? It's like, what I was told was it's not the Nemo way, So I think everything has changed since then. You see with Nemo the last couple of years, they're a lot more pragmatic. And it's the way football has gone, for better or for worse. And every team has been able to doing it to an extent. In fairness to them, they do try and keep the three lads up as much as possible and play some good football on the break. But they are being defensively sound first and foremost. And Nemo were quite similar in last year's final. I remember being up in the stand and Luke Connolly was around the halfway line, back defending. So I think Nemo have gone beyond that now. And is it going to be one sweeper? I would expect a minimum of one sweeper in front of him. I'm not sure you don't need two, but you don't need one kind of guarding either side. Castlehaven will drop numbers off. There's certain players, whether it's wing backs or something like that for Castlehaven, don't need to worry about them coming forward and kicking 2 or 3 points. There are plenty of fellas who can do that, but there's other players that you maybe can just say we're going to just let him be the free man and cover off the space in front of the two hurleys, because it's not just Brian either, because Brian gets a lot of attention. Michael probably wasn't really fit the last Sunday week. Probably wasn't at his fittest, hadn't played in a couple of games previously, but that game will bring him on a bit. So if you just go, okay, we're going to put one sweeper in front of Brian Hurley, Brian will still do his thing, but Michael Hurley and Jack Allan and the Maguires and Mark Collins and Damien from deep, if they're fit, they'll do damage as well. So I think it's about defensive structure and defensive solidity for Nemo to stop, not just Brian, but everything that they have. So yeah, I think we're gone a long way from where Nemo said they wouldn't have a sweeper or someone to double up on them. I think they're going to absolutely need that, at least one, and perhaps maybe even a second one. But they do have, they do have strong defenders. The defensive song, but their full back line is quite young. Owen Nation, Callum Lloyd, two very good young players. But it's a big occasion for those guys as well. So I think they're going to have to protect that line.
Is there an argument that Nemo are probably the best match for of a Brian Hurley or the lethal forwards that Castlehaven had? Because 2 years ago, Stephen Sherlock was in the forward side for St. Finbarrs and going into the county final, and Nemo shackled them very, very well in that particular game. So is there an element that Nemo are probably a best match in terms of that?
Yeah, I think to be fair to the Bears, they were down probably 4 starting, 3 at least, but maybe 4 starting defenders. If Sam Ryan is there, maybe Sam Ryan tags Brian, and Alan O'Connor comes in as the sweeper in that situation. Jamie Burns was kind of trying to do it, but you could tell they're not really used to that kind of system. The Bears have always gone 15 on 15, toe to toe, man on man, and that's the way they were comfortable. That's the way they've done it. But for Nemo a couple of years ago, that game against the Bears when the Bears were favourites and the Bears were going really well, I think they got their platform out around the middle of the field. Alan O'Donovan and Barry Cripps were incredibly strong that day, and I think they stopped the supply and they just controlled the ball and controlled the game. Paul Kerrigan, Luke Connolly, and we haven't touched on it. Luke isn't there for Nemo anymore. That's another reason. He mightn't have been at his blind best last year because of injury, but he's still a huge loss and a huge concern for an opposition as well. So I think the Bears at full strength would still, give Castlehaven a right good game. But at the moment, it just looks like Castlehaven have improved by 3, 4, 5 points. I'm not sure we can quite say the same about Nemo from last year. So look, again, I've got this wrong before. I was tipping up the Bears that time 2 years ago, even though in the back of the head it was the Nemo's record in the final and the fact that the Bears had never beaten them in the final, and maybe that played in their heads. Castlehaven don't have the same hang up. They've beaten them just last year, so I think the confidence and the belief is there with Castlehaven. Not writing off Nemo completely, of course, on that, but they have improvement to do. They have a lot of improvement to do based on what we've seen so far to come up to the level to beat Castlehaven.
You talked about Castlehaven's improvement there, and even from last season, they had a good run in the Munster Championship and the All Ireland series. But even against St Bridges in the semi final, they had like a 41 or 42% shot accuracy. Against the Bars in the semi final, it was 69%. What do you think that improvement comes down to? Like Shawnee Callahan's obviously in this year, was James McCarthy last year. What do you think that's down to, John? Is it just they're much better at shooting, or they're learning from experiences? What do you think it is?
I think sometimes it comes down to a little bit of just the confidence. Like, um, Brian Hurley started the last day and he kicked two or three off his left foot and it was straight over the bar. And it was just like when he got the ball, you know he's not missing. Like a different game, they mightn't go over, and if you miss one or two, you start to snatch it. And as well as Brian doing that, but great belief through the rest of the side then as well. And they were coming forward with confidence. I saw Sean Brown get forward and kick a good score, Andrew Welton come forward and kick a good score, both fellas off their left foot, which I think are their weaker feet. So I think when you start like that, and your main man is on song up the top, it just breeds confidence through the team. And they were looking like a team who just had incredible belief. It's not like they're going to have changed all that much as players in what 7 or 8 months or whatever since that All Ireland semi final. And Brian's been playing for how many years, so it's not like he's going to have done anything in the meantime that was vastly different to what he had done before. It's just getting the ball, getting early, getting scores on the board, having that confidence run through the team, and then playing on that basis. And they were happy then as well. Once they built their lead, they were happy to just kind of drop back a little bit, and wait for the space to open up on the break. And they did it brilliantly, to be fair. So I think we've kind of seen a clear change with the Castlehaven game plan in the last 18 months or so, and they're doing it very well. Like Matt Collins has adapted to his role. He's happy to sit. He goes forward when the chance comes, but he's doing kind of some of the dirty work back in defence, whereas previously he was an attacking midfielder, or even a centre forward, or playing in the forwards as well. And the guys in the break, then Jack Allan was eating up the space. Cathal Maguire was eating up the space. Rory Maguire didn't do a whole pile in the semi final, but he's shown it plenty of times what he can do as well. So they just look a really good outfit at the moment. And again, I know the Nemo boys are going. If any of them are looking at this, they're going to rub their hands and say, "This is great. This is perfect." Wait, and you never would dismiss Nemo's chances, but all the signs at the moment are pointing towards Castlehaven.
Another element that's quite interesting that I looked at in the semi-final was the kickouts from both sides of the coin in Nemo and Castlehaven. Castlehaven won 5 of the Bars long kickouts in the semi-final, and in the Nemo and Mallow game, Nemo were only forced to kick long with about 5 minutes to go. Mallow decided to push up and go hell for leather, more or less, and Mallow won 3 of Nemo's long kickouts out of 3. So if the Haven do push up for the entire of this game, do you think that's kind of curtains for Nemo after that?
Well, and look, I've been watching that a good bit as well with Castlehaven, and they really do two things. They either push fully or they drop fully. There's no halfway house. There's no in between with them. There will be a call at times to say it's a 13, 14, 15 man push. They'll push right up and force you to go along, and some of their bigger guys are on the middle. Welton, Rory Maguire, Damien McCallan, if he's fit, Mark Collins. They're 4 big guys to be hitting all good in the air. They can break it, and they're sharp on the brakes as well. So they'll do both depending on the time of the game and how things are going. Sometimes in a dead ball, they'll definitely push. And that could test Nemo, because Nemo aren't the biggest team in the world. They've got Alan O'Donovan as their main target. Barry Cripps is a big enough man, but beyond that, they don't have much by the way of size out there, So that is an area I think Castlehaven will be targeting. You're absolutely right. But there's also the case that if Castlehaven get a little bit of a lead, and if it's a little bit more frantic and they can't get that press up, they'll just let Nemo have the ball and drop off and let them come at them and try and hit them on the break, which they did a few times in the second half of the Bars the last test. So it is. We've seen that evolution with Castlehaven over the last little while as well. So there has obviously been some serious thinking done in Castlehaven over the last 2 seasons to say, these are the things we need to do if we want to take up the level. First of all, win the county last year, obviously winning Munster, but losing out in the All Ireland, and that's where their targets are going to be at. Same as Nemo. Nemo are going to want to win this, and they expect to win Munsters and All Irelands too. It just looks like Castlehaven have a little bit more realistic ambition of doing so at the moment.
You talked about big men around the middle for Castlehaven, and two boys that were missing for most of the Bars game were the two Callan brothers and Damien and Connor. Connor especially is a huge man around the middle of the field. If the two of them are fully fit and ready to go for Sunday, do you think that's another obstacle that for the Ebo that will be definitely in their way?
100%, absolutely. Like, I mean, they're two very important players for Castlehaven, and they kind of, I'd say they managed the loss of those guys seriously impressively against the Bars. Like I said, the Bars weren't quite full strength themselves. But defensively speaking, Sam Ryan, Billy Hennessy, John Crowley, another couple of guys that were injured. Nemo seem to be pretty much at full strength at the moment, for the most part. So if those two lads come back, of course, it's going to be a massive boost. Connor did come on for about 15 or so minutes, went down holding his arm at one stage. That would suggest to me he's not quite right. That's a tricky one for them to manage. So if he's feeling that in the semi-final, a broken bone in the arm, those things, they're either right or they're not. Strapping and everything else can only do so much. I'm not quite sure what Damien's issue was, but the fact that he only managed to get literally 5 minutes, and it was kind of go in there and full back and make sure Brian Hayes doesn't get a goal. So you'd have to imagine he's under pressure to be fully fit for Sunday. But at the same time, they both played a part in the semi-finals, so maybe the 2 weeks will bring them on another bit, and that they'll be ready to give a bit more again. And yeah, look, it'll do nothing but make them stronger. So I mean, they've got two Hurleys, Mark Collins, the Maguires, and the Cahillans, and as I said it already, I think those guys are all at or near intercounty football standard. So what's that, 8 or 9 guys in one team of an intercounty standard? I know Nemo are going to have their guys who aren't far off it, but they also have another few guys like Tomas Romani, who's played Cork under 20 and these kind of things. So yeah, look, if they're back and able to play a bigger part, it's nothing but a boost for Castlehaven. But it was very impressive how they managed without them in the semi-final, and how the players who came in and maybe the unsung heroes that they have kind of knew their jobs and knew their roles and were able to slot in and do the job. So yeah, look, it can only make them stronger if they're fit.
You mentioned in the chat before and that Luke Conley, it was a big loss to Nemo before the start of the year, but even looking at their scores and their run to the final, Paul Kerrigan's got 118, Mark Cronin's got 117, Ross Corkery's got 8 points and has been really impressive and lively throughout their games. Brian Hayes, a former Cork minor himself, has come on and looked lively in games as well. So do Nemo still have those attackers that Castlehaven need to watch? Because like I know Kerrigan is a stalwart at this stage, but you look at Cronin, Corkery and Hayes especially, they're all still young enough players. So like it still won't be a cakewalk for Castlehaven.
Absolutely not, and it definitely won't be a cakewalk. And I've had that kind of discussion with people over the last while. Like I said, the Nemo boys themselves feel like they haven't got the respect, and they might be right. People will. I'm blue in the face from kind of people saying to me, "This isn't a great Nemo team. This isn't a great Nemo team." And then, I think the quick comeback is 5 counties in 9 years and 7 finals in 9 years, or something to that effect as well. So their semi-final record is unreal. So clearly, they are still a very good team, even if they don't have the likes of the Colin Corkeries or James Masters or those kind of things. Like, but they do still have Paul Kerrigan, one of the best footballers in Cork with the last 20 years, playing absolutely brilliant football for Nemo. So he's going to take a lot of watching. Mark Cronin is another Cork senior, very intelligent footballer. Well capable of kicking scores. Was good in the semi-final as well. So he's dangerous. And Ross and Brian are both young talents. You see Ross started last day, it didn't go so well for him. Brian comes in and gets I think he got a point, I think he got a point, and they both got points against Clan, and Ross put away the penalty. So when young players, it can be confident, but they've got lots of ability, and then they've got players all over the pitch who've won several county medals. It's a fairly well established Nemo team. obviously got flagged. There's a couple of young guys maybe in their full back line, but Brian Murphy beside them has, experience in around the Cork senior panel. Kevin O'Donovan, Stephen Cronin, Kelly Fulignati's having a good season at centre back as well. So they are a good team. They are a very good team. There's no doubt about that. It's just that Castlehaven look that bit better at the moment. And look, we have to say it as we see it. Maybe we'll end up with egg in our face, and I'm sure the Nemo boys will love nothing better than ram it down our throats. But yeah, at the moment, all the signs point towards Castlehaven. But yeah, look, Nemo being Nemo, if nothing would surprise you if they were to pull this off.
I suppose Castlehaven have some lethal forwards of their own. Brian Hurley we talked about in depth previously, but Jack Callan for me against the Bars, like he was creating goal chances. He had 2 goal chances against the Bars, one brilliantly saved by Darren Newman, another one just drifting past the post as well. He's also one of the top scorers from playing the Cork Championship as well. Has his role gone up for Castlehaven this year, and how crucial is that? Because he's a speedy player, he's an intelligent player, and he's a very good player in the forwards to have as well. Cathal Maguire there, if Michael Hurley's fit, so Castlehaven have some lethal forwards of their own as well.
Yeah, 100%. I think we said already, it's not all about Brian Hurley, as good as he is. Michael last year was phenomenal in the semi-final. Maybe fitness issues are holding him back a little bit this year, but they're able to cope with that where other teams wouldn't be able to. Like if Paul Kerrigan doesn't fire for Nemo the next day, okay, Mark Cronin might be able to set up, but Mark is a kind of a 3 points a game kind of character. I think I've seen him do something like Brian the last day, keep 10 or 11 points or that kind of thing. So Jack Callan's role, 100% you're spot on, and it has been since the start of the year. Joe was at their opener against Clan down in the pitch down here in Ross, and he was outstanding that day. I think the very first ball he got just took off in behind the fence and couldn't be caught. He has absolutely upped his game several levels, I would say, this year, and he's scoring freely and everything else like that. So having him come in and take the burden off the two Hurleys a little bit, it's kind of allowed Mark Collins to go back into that deeper role because they don't need him to come forward, and he would have contributed plenty of scores for the Haven back in the day. He's still capable of getting forward to get the odd score, but they have the firepower. Cathal Maguire, you're right, as well, is having another fine season. He's had a couple of good seasons now in a row for Castlehaven. He's a good player. He's very quick as well. Sometimes plays left half back, starts at left half back, and because they have numbers back, has license to get forward and create and take scores as well. Like we touched on Rory Maguire as well doing it. So yeah, they seem to have kind of threats from a lot of different positions, whereas with other teams, sometimes you think if you can shut down a couple of guys, it'll do the business for you. With Castlehaven at the moment, the form that they're in, you can't actually just go up and focus on Brian Hurley. Like, it's obviously going to be a key thing for Castlehaven or for Nemo to say we have to restrain Brian Hurley some bit. We have to contain him. But there are other players that they're going to have to worry about as well. So look, there's a lot of thinking for Nemo to do, and I'll be straight with you. If they pull this off, and if their management team pull this off, then they'll deserve to kind of gloat and deserve to kind of turn around and tell everyone a way to stick it, because it'll be one of their best counties if they do pull it off, in my book.
We've probably emphasised it already that we both probably, and you probably think that Castlehaven will get over the line in the end. But if you were to pick a margin on Sunday, what would it be, do you think?
I think the Haven can win this by 4 or 5 points. I think they can. I think they're in that good a form. Again, a lot of it comes down to the two Callans as well. If they're fit, it kind of makes it, if they're properly fit, not just fit enough to get out in the pitch, but actually properly fit, then yeah, it makes it even more of a case for Castlehaven. If they miss out, or one of them miss out, or they can only come in on the bench, might make it a little bit tighter. So look, it's kind of county final. It's kind of all in the day. If Nemo can get a good start and maybe get a few turnovers back along, dispossess Brian Hurley, dispossess Jack Callan, those kind of things, get their counter attack going, put a few scores on the board early, then anything can happen. But I'd be if I was on Castlehaven, if I had money on Castlehaven from the start of the season when they were 3-1 or whatever it was, I'd be feeling good. I'd be confident about my selection. So I think they can win it by 4.
Interesting prediction there, but we'll have to see on Sunday how it all plays out. Thanks, John, for coming on to the podcast, and enjoy the game on Sunday.
Thanks. Cheers, Matthew.
The Star Sport podcast is brought to you by Access Credit Union. Access Credit Union, funding dreams for over 50 years.
So welcome back to the Star Sport podcast, and after John Hayes brilliantly previewed the county final there, we look at our own region in the Carbery Championships, and last weekend, Sean, it was Ballinascarthy against Diarmuid and Mathunas in the Carbery Junior A Hurling Championship final, and it ended all square, 13 points apiece in Inniskeen. The game will go to a replay. I'm not entirely sure what the date of the replay is as of yet, but it should be an entertaining replay nonetheless. And Mathunas live to fight another day. But you look at the scoreline, 13 points apiece, Sean. Probably low scoring because of the weather conditions on Sunday. Like we were other places, obviously, on Sunday, other games across the county and all that. And the wind was absolutely wicked. And I imagine in an open ground like Inniskeen, it would have been a deciding factor as well. So a fair enough result between the two sides in this one, it has to be said.
Yeah, it is, and in fairness as well, with the tough weather conditions, it will probably be nicer to see the two go at it when the day is a bit brighter. There's less wind, obviously. Hopefully, they get good conditions because they're two good teams who are well able to play hurling, and it's a good showcase for Carbery's junior grade. But just even playing the last day, it's a different type of game altogether, Matt. Playing into stiff breeze there. We even saw it with the Premier Senior Hurling final. It was pretty much a game of two halves and how much you could score with the wind. And it would be nice to see Mathunas and Bal go at it again. Obviously, Mathunas have their own football final now to look forward to, and Bal will try and get a few of their injuries cleared up for the next day. But should be fascinating now for the replay in a couple of weeks' time.
It should definitely, and you mentioned Mathunas in a football final action this weekend. They'll be playing Kilmacabea after Kilmacabea beat St Mary's last weekend on a scoreline of 113 to 1-9. Damien Gore, I'd imagine, to the 4 again in that semi-final. So it's Kilmacabea and Diarmuid and Mathunas final. Interesting, considering Mathunas are in the hurling final, they could do the double. Kilmacabea were beaten by Barry Rowe last year in the final, obviously, and would want to win this final to right the wrongs from last season from their point of view. So should be an interesting final, this one, between two very good sides.
Yeah, it should, Matt. It's pretty much a case of deja vu, really. You have a team who came from nowhere to take on pretty much the pre-season favourites, with Mathunas now looking at Kilmacabea. So Mathunas will be going in as underdogs, obviously. As we mentioned there, they had the hurling the last week, and they've been rolling on, week off, week after week, and it's a case of, keep the momentum going. They won't fear Kilmacabea too much. It's, underdogs against favourites, team Mathunas who've never won it before against Kilmacabea, who've won it a good few times now in the last few years and are always around the final. So Mathunas, with John Roach at the helm there, he'll have him playing some nice open attacking football. Kilmacabea, the same, they're well able to play as well. But it'll be all about how Mathunas deal with Damien Gore. He's been the difference for them the last few years, and even the semi-final against St Mary's there, he requires a lot of attention. I know when we played him last year, he was unbelievable that night. It was a fair credit to him, and it'll be interesting to see how Mathunas plan for him, because he could be the winning and deciding of that game on Saturday night. But it should be a great game, Matt, and it's fantastic that Carbery have decided to put it on the Saturday night. Obviously, Castlehaven are playing on the Sunday, so you couldn't do that. But to have it there as a standalone is fantastic for Mathunas, for Kilmacabea, and for Carbery football in general as well. So definitely one to watch on Saturday night.
Definitely is. Just to put you on the spot, who would you pick to win this game? Will Kilmacabea do it after losing last year, or will Mathunas keep their double dream alive?
Yeah, it's so kind of as I alluded to, it's in these big games, it's really how do you handle the star players, and it's going to come down to what kind of an influence will Damien Gore have on Mathunas on Saturday night. Will they put two men on him? Will they decide to drop a sweeper? It's going to be a battle of tactics there, because he is what makes them take either wins freeze for them or he scores from play. It's pretty much it all goes through Damien. Not discounting the quality they have around him, but he literally is what makes Kilmacabea tick. So if Mathunas could curb his influence, I'd give him a massive shot. But if Damien has one of those days, it's Kilmacabea's title, and they'll have real ambitions to go far in the county championship as well.
Should be very interesting one to call, definitely, and should be a very interesting game this weekend. We'll take a quick break now, and after the break we'll look at what's in this week's paper.
The Star Sport podcast is brought to you by Access Credit Union. Access Credit Union, funding dreams for over 50 years.
So it is that time of the week again where we look at what's in this week's sports section, and as usual, it is action-packed. No more so than a preview to this week's County Premier Senior Football Championship final between Castlehaven and Nemo Rangers. And it should be a very interesting game. Some very good pieces in this week's Star about the game, including John Hayes' weekly column on the game itself, added on to his podcast chat earlier as well. The Carbery Junior A Hurling Championship final ended in a draw last weekend between Ballinascarthy and Diarmuid and Mathunas, and there will be a full match report from that game in Inniskeen in the paper as well. As well as that, in the Carbery Junior A Football Championship, the final is this weekend between Kilmacabea and Diarmuid and Mathunas. There is a preview to that, as well as a match report between Kilmacabea and St Mary's. That game, Kilmacabea won 113 to 1-9. There was a full match report on that game as well as the preview I just mentioned between Kilmacabea and Diarmuid and Mathunas. Big Cork LGFA news as well breaking this week. The new manager of the senior side is Joe Carroll, the current Aeroke LGFA manager, and there is a piece in the Star about that as well. A lot of West Cork involvement in the backroom team there, and there will be a very good piece on that as well. Other than Gaelic games, there's also soccer, rugby, motorsport, you name it. All sorts of sports in this week's Star Sports section, and definitely worth a read this Thursday. And as usual, if you are further afield or can't make it to the shops, you can subscribe to the Southern Star e-paper and get the Southern Star on your laptop, tablet or phone. Just go to www.southernstar.ie/subscribe, enter your details, and you'll get an exact replica of the newspaper for less than €2 per week. As always, thanks for listening to the Star Sport podcast, and thanks again to our sponsors at Access Credit Union. If you enjoyed this, please remember to rate, review and subscribe to the podcast wherever you get your podcasts, and we'll be back again next week. Until then, take care.